We're with Walter Parks. Walter, what we like to do on the Big Fat American Rock Show is have every artist who comes into here do their rock and roll resume, because I think it's so much more interesting when the person says, here's what I've done. This way we don't miss anything either. Why don't you give everybody Walter Parks' rock and roll resume?
Well, should I start at the beginning or start more recent?
I would start at the beginning, the very beginning. Well, it's a fine place to start.
I hate to be so archetypical, but I started in garages like many people. And my parents wanted to, my mother wanted to keep track of me. So she said, look, you can have your band and set it up in the house, play in the garage, and for that matter, I played in the living room. I had a group called the Parental Tears Band, and we called it Parental Tears because my parents did not want me to go into music. They wanted me to take on a little bit more respectable path. And so I played the music of the day and so on, all the while knowing that I needed to get to New York. I grew up in Florida, by the way, and I needed to get to New York and sort of share my original music with the world, and I figured that was my portal. I had a group called Dear John, and it was a rock and roll band, and we won the good graces of a impresario named Don Kirshner. I don't know if you remember.
Don Kirshner's rock concerts, of course.
And he had some sort of a search going on to find some of the most original groups of the time. This would have been late '80s, and we ended up going to what was once the Studio 54, and it became the Ritz at one point in Midtown. And I took the band up there, and I went to the national level, and everybody was there. Marla Trump was there, and the Don Kirshner was, of course, there, and all these potentates and bigwigs and music, and I didn't win the national contest, and I think it was because I showed my hand a little too early to the competing band, and they saw my stage decorations, and they had none, and so Dear John did not move on to fame and fortune, and I think mostly because of that one error that I made of during the sound check, I set up my whole elaborate stage system and stage setup with masks and all this sort of thing that was in the spirit of Roxy Music and Brian Ferry. And so the other band thought, oh boy, we're really behind here. We're behind the 8 ball. We need to go out and get some plants and ferns and fireworks and everything. And they did that, and they eclipsed us in that sense. So not so much about music. I think we were a better band, but they ended up putting on a better show. So that was that part of it, Dear John. And then I moved to New York full-time from Florida, and I started an acoustic group called The Nudes. And I just wanted to strip it down bare. And so that's why I use that metaphor. And I was kind of running out of money, but in a certain way, that's sort of good for art in a sense. You keep it. What I mean by that is that if you're really bloated in your funding, when you take on the arts, you forget about connecting with people, and I didn't forget about that. I had to connect with people to survive in New York City. And the Nudes did very, very well. We played all over the country. We started playing in Grand Central Station in New York City. And then we got various gigs, and agents picked us up, and we ended up playing all over the country. And we did it because we connected with people. And I attribute that to playing on the streets in New York City. You have 30 seconds to get somebody's awareness and to capture their attention when they're passing by on their way to work. And you don't learn how to do that if you grow up in Bakersfield, California, or if you grow up in, Savannah, Georgia, or somewhere like that. People are on the move here, and you have to get their attention. So the Nudes did very, very well. Fast forward to staying in New York, and I had to take a break from performing, and I went to work for a small record label. It was called Empress Records, and it it was an interesting time in my life. I helped them set the label up, but I just couldn't bear not performing anymore. I was a suit for 2 years, a suit as they call it, meaning somebody in the music industry, and somebody who was in Richie Havens's inner circle suggested that Richie audition me. He needed a guitar player, and I show up to the audition, and Richie knew me. And he knew me because with my group, The Nudes, we used to open for him. He didn't know me by name, but he was comfortable with me. And so I started playing with Richie. And I learned something really, really important in that audition. I auditioned for Richie Havens in the basement of a Jersey City house, in the basement. It was me, Richie, and his manager. And Richie played with as much fervor and passion in that basement for only 2 people as he did at Woodstock. And I would later know that for sure because I got that gig, and for 10 years I played with him all over the world. We played festivals from Australia to the UK. I played Madison Square Garden twice, Carnegie Hall twice. And Richie's level of intensity never let up from that first audition. And I realized that, this is no messing around. It was all about connection. And that's what I love about New York City, is that you have to connect to keep yourself alive.
Mm.
And so here I am in the present day. 5 years ago, Richie Havens essentially retired and would pass away. And I was left with the question of what do I do with myself? I had been his right-hand man for 10 years. And to keep a gig like that in music, you have to say yes to every opportunity that comes to you from your employer. So every time he'd call me for a gig, yes, I'm available. So that means I couldn't be doing other things. And so I had to sort of not reinvent myself. I had to invent myself. I said, what do I have to offer? And so I just kind of looked deep down, and I dug into my Florida roots, which is, once again, to where I started off with in this little story. And I started playing with this Florida style, and it kind of caught on, and that's what I'm still doing with.
What part of Florida?
I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, the north
right.
Florida.
So that's the same area where Tom Petty comes out of. Right?
Yeah, he's
Leonard Skinner.
Yep, Tom's from Gainesville, and Leonard Skinner. Yeah, exactly right. That's the epicenter of where they started. Is where I grew up.
So how would you define the Florida sound?
Well, the Florida sound is, I think it's the soundtrack to danger and a sort of kind of twisted beauty. There's it's swampy.
Mm-hmm.
It's swampy mixed with a little bit of country. There's always a little bit of country, even in the Skynyrd sound. It's a little bit. It's got that a little bit of that foundation and everything. And where does that come from? That comes from jigs and reels and so on, which came down through Appalachia. But so it has a little bit of that country vibe, but it's got a little danger in it too.
Yeah.
And the swampy part is that when you grow up in Florida and we don't kids growing up in Florida, at least back when I grew up, we didn't play in playgrounds, in nice tidy playgrounds. We played in the woods.
Right.
And you're always aware of the potential for rattlesnakes and gators and that kind of thing. I mean, it's just ubiquitous.
Yeah. You're playing for life.
Yeah, you're playing for life, but you get sort of comfortable with it in a certain sense.
Oh.
You never forget it. You're always on your guard. And if your parents teach you right, they teach you how to deal with these things. But so I think a little bit of that foreboding, omnipotent danger is always in a little bit of that swamp music, the Skynyrd thing, and even Tom Petty. He was a little rough.
I agree. Yeah.
A little rough. I mean, great melodies and catchy melodies, but
where do you get inspired for lyrics when you're writing songs? Where does that come from? Because I know Leonard Skinner, you hear the story about one of the guy, his aunt, he gave him the simple man advice.
Yeah.
And then Give Me 3 Steps is based on a true story in a bar.
Yeah.
A guy's about to shoot him, so he runs on out.
Right. Yeah.
Where do you get your lyrical inspiration?
Well, there's since I started writing for my group Swamp Cabbage, I just started observing life, and real things, real crazy, quirky things happen down south.
Oh yeah,
especially in Florida. Florida's a weird state.
You got a lot of serial killers down there.
I guess it's one of our great exports. I guess, or maybe not an export, but there's for instance, I wrote a song called "Butter," and it's just a story about. There was a guy who was really kind of healthy, and he wanted to. He'd never tried Southern cooking, so the first place he goes is the Waffle House, and he goes into the Waffle House and he orders grits. He'd never tried grits, but he wants his grits without butter. And the waiter says, "I'm sorry, sir, you want your grits without butter?" He goes, "I'm sorry, sir, but they gonna be butter.
They're gonna be butter and pepper."
Yeah, they gonna be butter. So that's like, that story was just one of those weird stories that you hear down south. Is true. Yeah. And you kind of pick it up in truck stops. You kind of some of it happens to us. Some of it we hear.
And it's back to this connection thing, making a connection.
Yeah, and because real people are living this stuff,
right?
And but what's so funny, Zach, is down there. This is not really so weird. It sounds almost exotic.
It's
up here.
Just the way it is.
Yeah, it's just the way it is.
Well, I've been around the United States, so I try to adopt the local culture. Like one day, I got invited to lunch. I was working at Terre Haute, Indiana.
Yep.
And I thought we were going to eat some sandwiches. They hand me a shotgun and they go, "We're going to hunt for some food." I'm like, "What are we hunting for?" "Squirrel." I'm like, "Oh, great." New York City guy, like, squirrel.
Yeah.
Never thought of eating those things. They're rats, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Went out there, and I ended up bagging most of the squirrels.
Wow.
It was breezy. I come back with all the squirrels like this for the whole family.
Yeah.
And they're like, "How'd you do that?" I go, "Well, I followed the squirrels up to their nest and I blew them out of it." "Oh, you can't be doing that. That's not sporting." I'm like, "Sporting? You want to eat or don't you want to eat?"
Right, yeah.
So, I think we both taught each other something. Like when you have to eat and you have to kill, there's no pleasurable way of doing that. There's no easy way to doing it. Just kill and eat. So, but yeah, I mean, and you know as well as I do, too, when someone invites you to their dinner, to say, "Sorry, I'm not eating that." Mm-hmm. It's insulting.
Right, yeah.
So you got to learn how to eat that kind of stuff. And then, the different ways that people talk. When I'm down south, I talk too fast, so I have to learn how to slow it up, because otherwise I think I'm insulting them. And then the other thing I have to realize is, "Bless your heart" is not a very nice thing for someone to say to me when I'm down south. It's how they say, "Bless your heart." Right. They want to kill you.
Yeah. It's all context, though, like you say. I mean, it's like I think people throw it around these days, almost humorous, knowing that everybody's onto it at this point. But I've been in all the circles you can possibly go in down there, from high-end, high society circles in Savannah, Georgia, down to biker bars in Florida.
Yeah.
So, bless your heart gets tossed around in all of those circles, and it's just a matter of context.
I must be doing something right, because I know exactly what they're talking about when they're the swamp people.
Yeah,
"Shoot him, Elizabeth, shoot him." I know what he's saying. And then there are other people that I walk into, and it seems for some reason, especially when they don't understand what they're saying because they have an accent or a dialect, they'll send them to me, and next thing I'm having is a conversation. Everybody starts to laugh because, "How did you figure out what he was saying?" I'm like, "I was listening." Listening is something totally different than hearing. But anyway, what are you doing now?
Well, musically, I'm still playing with a kind of a swampy sound, but what I'm trying to do is I'm combining the swampy, omnipotent danger with a little bit of the beauty of the swamp, and I'm taking some of the old spirituals, the Southern spirituals, mostly slave spirituals, doing my kind of Southern swampy thing with them. And I've got a non-religious show called Spirituals Reimagined and the songs they inspired. And so some of my music kind of goes in that direction, but I'm also taking old songs like Amazing Grace and Am I Born to Die, which was one of the great songs from the Civil War movie, Cold Mountain. I don't know if you remember one of those battle scenes. So these are hymns, Zach, from the 1700s, and
I love that idea.
And I'm taking them and playing them with an electric guitar with tremolo and almost and it's like a synthesizer that makes the guitar sound almost a little bit like an ARP, like what Pete Townsend used to do in Bob O'Reilly or We Won't Get Fooled Again.
Yeah.
And so I'm bringing some of these slave songs into the modern age through the electric guitar, not through a computer. But and it's a wonderful attempt to say things have changed, but in a certain way they haven't changed that much. And so that's one thing I'm doing musically. I'm also presenting festivals and presenting concerts. I live, whereas I'm from Florida, I live in the New York City area. I live in Jersey City to be exact. And can I tell you about what I'm doing over there?
Yeah, absolutely.
We live in a part of Jersey City called the Heights, which to my summation is similar to New Orleans in a sense, and it's like the old frontier. It's a little bit lawless in a way, and but comfortably so. Artists it seem like they're fleeing Brooklyn and fleeing Manhattan for expense reasons and so on, and they're coming to our neighborhood, and there's an attempt by myself and some other neighborhood members to just make the neighborhood what we want it to be. And I'm not talking about with development. I'm talking about culturally and artistically. So we found a space under an old bridge that was abandoned. It's an arched bridge that was made in 1905, and it's a cobblestone street that the county has decommissioned. And I thought this would be a great place to throw concerts. You know, you can fit like 400 people under this thing. And so that's exactly what we did. And we're in our third year of it. We call the series The Vault Allure. And people can look it up online, The Vault Allure. And it's underneath an arched bridge, which is a vault. And the allure of it is something that you would understand when you could see some images of this.
Sure.
And to have a concert in that space is something like they might do in Europe. And we mix all different types of music together. We don't try to make it a thematic experience, and almost in the spirit of what I think Bill Graham used to do at Fillmore East. I'm trying to carry that on. Some people would say, well, that's a bad analogy because Bill Graham had a profit motive. I'm not going to get into that. I think as far as his programming, he was very eclectic.
Well, yeah, I'm Jimi Hendrix, the Allman Brothers, Janis Joplin. Yeah. I think the Doors might have played there. I can't always remember all the artists, but think about the idea of booking Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
And a Fillmore. Or the Allman Brothers up in New York City.
Yeah.
These guys from the same area you're from. Right. It wasn't really, it was a risk. I'll say that.
Well, and furthermore, to what I think was just fantastic, and I wish I had been a little bit older to have gone there myself, but he would take the Allman Brothers and Jimi Hendrix and pair them up with, and now I'm making this up, this might not have exactly been
I know what you're going,
with Miles Davis or Sun Ra or something, jazz groups. And to me, that's what I'm trying to carry forth at the Vault Allure series in Jersey City. On September 15th, which is our next one, we have an Israeli jazz band. Now, it's modern jazz, and we're combining them with a bassoonist who's playing classical music from, and that's on the same bill with one of the co-founders of the Blue Man Group, Larry Heineman, and I actually are working on a piece of music that is more ambient in nature, similar to Daniel Lanois and that sort of thing. And we're playing while a fashion model walks down a runway. But we're not trying to make it like Fashion Week in New York City. We're taking live movies of this model as she walks down the runway, and we're altering those images on a screen behind her. And we're really trying to tease the awareness of the people who are there. Are you going to look at the real model, or are you going to look at the altered electronic image of the model that she's passing by? And we're trying to, the model is beautiful and she's right there before you, but do you prefer to look at the screen or do you prefer to look at her? It's just a statement on our awareness.
Almost like, do you prefer the distortion of reality over reality?
Exactly. That's better put than I put it.
You're a highly educated individual. Tell me, how did you educate yourself? Because I believe no matter where you go to school, you educate yourself. It's not somebody else's. Your choice.
I noticed your choice of wording. Well, I educated myself. I think it's when you say that, I think if that's true that we do educate ourselves, and I guess it probably is. It comes from willingness. It comes from willingness to say, here's something I don't know. I'm going towards that rather than away from it.
That's why I said it was a choice.
Yeah. And yes, it was a choice, but I also had people in my life who were willing to say, you're messing up here. You need to do this and that. That's some mentors along the way.
Fair enough.
But I did have the choice to listen to them or not.
Right.
Yeah. So I moved from Jacksonville, Florida to New York City for one thing. And I thought, well, I'm the cat's meow. Let's see if I really am, So I was willing to go towards what I thought was the ultimate litmus test. And that was New York City. And, that was one way. And I like jazz music. I like being around it, but I don't really play it per se. And what I like about jazz is that the underlying jazz music and jazz musicians give you the time of day if you're a good musician, if you've done the work. And rock and roll musicians give you the time of day if you're a good hang. If you're fun in bars and you just, you're
okay.
I mean, you gotta play well, but it's almost more important, if you're fun to get along with.
Mm-hmm.
But jazz musicians don't really care about that. What they want to know first is, can you play? Have you done your homework? What's your twist on Coltrane? What's your take on Wes Montgomery, and so on. And I like that. So that's why I hung out with a lot of jazz musicians, and that's why I still hang out with a lot of jazz music, even though what I play is more delivered in the spirit of rock.
I would probably, if it was me, I would probably want to perform as a rock artist. No. I would enjoy the rock music.
Yeah.
But if I was to perform, I'd want to be in an orchestra, and I would want to play. Maybe I can't do it, but the violin, or the piano in an expert way. My musical taste of what I like to listen to and go to would be far different from what I would actually play myself.
Yeah.
Sort of like I cannot watch golf on television, but I don't mind playing it.
Right? Yeah, sure.
I don't think I could sit there if I'm in the audience in a classical setting, but if I'm there participating, I want to that's what I want to do.
Yeah. Right.
You see the correlation there?
Of course.
Yeah.
But the interesting irony about that is if you had attempted to play the classical piano or the cello or violin or whatever, then you would find yourself in the audience a lot because you would appreciate it from a different, but
I remember playing golf one time.
Yeah.
And then after I played the golf game, I was so bad when I saw it on television. I'm like, it's not actually bad to watch. And then after a while, I was like, I don't play golf anymore.
And back to being bored.
So I can understand that. And I just try to use analogies that people can relate to outside of music, because most of the people listening are not trained musicians. They don't, they don't live that life. So you got to kind of bring it together. And then the other interesting thing, I noticed that you were taking French. How fluent are you in French?
Well, je peux parler presque couramment. And French is a passion of mine. It's really my only pastime in that sense.
Oh, I get it.
And it's something that I do to, again, you made a question back, or how do you better yourself or something like that. And that's another way. I dived or dove into it, and I continuously do it. I carry a book around with me most all the time.
That's great.
And French is a good language to stretch yourself in, because the French people will not let you get away with bad usage.
You cannot speak French badly. I know that.
It's not. They won't let you do it.
I knew more than I know now because I'm out of practice, but I used to be fluent in French. Now I'm working on Russian.
Wow.
My daughter is a hyper polyglot, which means she speaks many languages.
Okay.
German, Italian. She's doing the Russian with me.
Okay.
Very subtle. She's got a list. I mean, she's got a whole way of doing these things. I never seen anybody so motivated that every day, even whether she's in or out of school, she'll take a few hours just to spend time on her foreign languages every day.
Yeah, she has a passion.
Yeah,
for it.
I mean it's great when you find a passion. So you got your music and your French. That's great.
Well, and in some ways I've combined that. I'm going to France in October. I'll play a little bit over there, and I used to do it with Richie Havens. I would have to do some of the road managerial duties and stuff in French. And so it was helpful for me in business as well.
Yeah. I also think it helps your creative mind when you know all of these languages. But here's where it backfires. Funny story. Sometimes I order coffee and I sit there. I can't say anything because I don't know what words to use. That happens to me.
You mean when you're traveling over there?
Downstairs. Downstairs at Starbucks, I'll be like, cafe au lait avec sucre, right? I'm like, no, that's not. I mean to say, just give me a coffee.
Yeah, because you're trying to be exotic or something.
No. My mind gets literally stuck.
Oh, I see. Because you have those capabilities.
The different languages, my mind gets literally stuck. So I can't say anything. I just go. I do like Father Jack and Father Ted. Howdy, rabbits! I don't know what to say. But.
Well.
What new albums are you working on?
I've got a new record that I'm finishing the writing for. I've only got one solo record. It's called Walter Parks, and Richie Havens played on that as well. And I'm just about to wrap up the writing of it. So that's my record. It's I'm songs that are they're about living, there's one song on it called "Try" that I wrote. I was in Wisconsin one winter, and I was just happened upon an old farmhouse that was boarded up. I had a little time off, and it's an exercise that I like to do, Zach. Sometimes I just sit and stare at something. There's a roll of paper towels here on the desk, and you can hear that. And if you stare at that paper towel roll long enough, you're going to see things in it. Now, I don't mean see things. You're not going to see through the paper towel.
You'll notice the texture.
You're going to notice the texture. You're going to contemplate how it was made, how it was.
What tree it came from.
What tree? Where did this come from? Did this come from China? Did this come from the upper Midwest? Whatever. So I did that with this farmhouse, and I thought, if you look at any boarded up farmhouse, it can be upstate New York, it can be in Wisconsin, there's some sorrow behind that.
I was going to say, there's a sad story.
Yeah, there's a sad story, and somebody let that farm slip away from them. And the farm, for whatever reason, is not productive anymore. And at one point, that farm was productive. And one of the lines in it is, he built you in Wisconsin back in 1922, as Granddad was so fond of saying no other state could do. He had left winter's bite on another continent, and that he had to have his northern lights was no coincidence. So he had, as most of the people are from the upper Midwest, they're from Scandinavia.
Right,
and
right.
They wanted to live in a similar weather.
Right.
And the story goes, and I'm guessing about this, but I'm
Fine.
contemplating this because I'm on a road in Wisconsin looking at a farmhouse that's boarded up. And I thought, this guy, some family, probably his last name is Hansen or something, probably came from Scandinavia or Finland, and he built this place shortly after the turn of the 1900s. And it was probably a thriving farm at one point. And for some reason, fast forward to the present, his relatives just can't keep it, or it just makes more sense to sell it to a corporation or to just put it up for sale, and they couldn't pay their loan. But there's a sadness, like you said, behind it. And so the calling line, the relief, the chorus of the song is, try to keep living, try to keep giving. You'll be okay. You'll be all right.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And you just try to keep living. And so that's one of the songs that I'm working on.
But can you find sometimes the humor in that? Like maybe he didn't let it close. Maybe he won the lottery and said, I'm out of here. I want $250 million.
Yeah.
That would be a screwed up thing. Like the song goes one way and and then he won the lottery,
Right,
folks,
yeah.
and everybody laughs.
Yeah.
But in all honesty,
Yeah.
you got the thing in Jersey City going on. Well, how do people get in contact with you?
You can
to see that.
You can. I think the best way is to just go to vaultallure.com, VAULTALLURE.com, and we've got a link that sends you to one of the neighborhood sites that tells you about that. And or you can just come to Jersey City at Riverview Park is what it's called, in the Heights, Jersey City Heights. It's very important, on September 15th.
Fantastic.
And there's it's going to be where I need to mention one thing that's really important is from the first 2 years of doing this, we attracted the attention of Nokia Bell Labs.
Huh.
And Nokia Bell Labs has been very nice to us and helped fund this year's series. And they have presented and brought in some of their colleagues and some of their researchers who are doing musical experiments and so on out at Stevens Institute, which is a college in Hoboken. So Stevens Institute is kind of filtering us some students who are working with Bell Labs, and we're integrating them into this show. So it's a really nice sort of interplay between corporate R&D and street level art, and I think that's a really interesting partnership.
I like it a lot.
And so there we go.
When your album is done, how about we have you come back here and we'll do another segment in which we set up every single song on the album.
Oh,
and then we'll distribute it everywhere.
Okay.
And it'll take off like, I don't know.
That's extremely
like
generous.
breakfast at the Waffle House.
At the Waffle House.
With butter on it.
And they gonna be butter.